Yeah.
So do I.
All right, we will get officially going. I really love the intimate setting. I'm a very kind of close-knit type of person, so I really am intrigued by how this goes, and I love where we're at right now here in WeLive. The first couple things I want to get out of the way is obviously this would not be possible, the food, the beer, and the space without WeWork and WeLive. I've had a handful of conversations explaining what WeWork is, what WeLive is, but by all means, I think Jonathan's card is over on that table. If you guys ever want to tour, whether it's through them or even hit myself or Jessica lives here, we'd be more than happy to kind of give you the behind the scenes of what it's like to live or work at a WeWork or WeLive situation. But again, my name is Kevin O'Connell. I'm the founder of the Niche Movement, and I'm really excited about this. I don't think many of you know, this is the first time we've done something like this. A lot of people I've been telling about this evening. It started out by when I self-published my book of June of 2015. And so my wife's right here in the corner, but we decided, hey, let's do a book party in New Jersey because that's where I'm from. And we had about 50, 60 people come out, and I was blown away. We did one in DC, same result, and I'm like, well, let's keep these meetups and kind of informal networking happy hours events going where you don't need a shirt and tie and a name tag and all this networking stuff. And we kept them going for the last year and a half. And now we have Kelly right here, you can raise your hand, who helped really plan the crux of this event in our last happy hour in September. And Heidi's back there helping plan our conference and doing some live feed, it looks like. But really, we've been putting these events together to bring people together. It could be 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, 100 people. I'm very interested in connection, which is a lot of what Jessica is here to talk about. But the initiative was born on the side hustle. It still is a side hustle, passion project that kind of has turned grassroots movement. This was something that was started when I was working at Rutgers University, typing away late at night, working on my website, doing blogging on the weekends, doing free workshops, whatever it took. And so I just think it's very fitting that we kick this off in front of a live audience where we're taking our podcasts and video content and bringing a live audience, getting people to meet one another. We have a very special guest, Jessica. And the other thing I like to do is I like to find out, how does Jessica and I know one another? And it's this whole notion of the connection economy. Jessica wrote a blog post on Medium, right, about living in WeLive. This guy, Andrew Gasson, who was on our podcast back in March, who I met like day one of WeWork, he read it. You guys then probably met or whatever, talked about Crystal City. And then I think it was Andrew was like, oh, you should talk to Kevin. Jess then followed me on Twitter, emailed me, and a couple weeks later we had coffee, walked down to the Crystal City Park, talked about each other's career path, and all of a sudden she invited Courtney and I to the Curated Table event, which is her now full-time baby, so give her a clap for that, Curated Table. And now she just had her reunion event, her 4th event here in Crystal City last night, but I also know Jen is here. You were the first person of Curated Table, correct? Kind of, yeah.
4 years ago.
But Jess, I think, is very dynamic and very passionate person of not only what she does, but for people and getting to know one another. And I'm very excited to interview her to talk about side hustle to now full-time gig. And one of the things when she sent me her bio this morning, she's like, this is something that's been started in 2012. Even though she did the traditional, she went to college and worked you went into law a little bit or getting into that. And basically now she said to the point where she was spazzing, like she had to just do this. She ripped off the Band-Aid a couple weeks ago, and this is your first full-time week, right, of being on launching yourself full-time.
Yeah.
So please give it for Jessica. We're going to sit down here, and there will be a live Q&A afterwards too, so feel free to ask questions at the end. But thank you guys so much for being here. Wow, this is really interesting. There's just like 1 or 2 people usually behind the camera. All right, so the thing that I want to start out with, we'll talk about like where you're from and how you got into this, but I think you're really, really good at bringing people together and reading people and how to take... Sorry, I hope everybody back there can hear. We don't have microphones. But so you're really good at bringing people together, and you're really able to kind of read a room and figure out who should be in that gathering. Where does that come from? Does that come from childhood, from your parents, from your upbringing? Where does that come from?
Yeah, probably 2 aspects of my childhood. The first is I come from a big Italian family, and every Memorial Day my grandma would host these Memorial Day picnics. And what I really loved about those picnics is that they brought together our neighbors, our relatives, local firefighters, policemen, whoever was walking their dog, and it was so unfussy, yet it was so fun. Everyone was crowded around cheese platters that were from the grocery store. I mean, my grandma was Italian, but she didn't lift a finger. When people said, hey, can I help? She was like, yeah, you can help. I need you to bring kibasi and sauerkraut and like just put them to work. And that drove home for me how important connections are in an event like that, more important than how bespoke a appetizer platter might be, or whether you've got streamers, you know, and decorations around the house. That it was all about relationships. So that's where the primacy of relationships, I think, comes in my life. But then the second aspect, like how I read a room. Yeah. So candidly, I was like a chubster in middle school, and then I was a late bloomer in all kinds of ways. And when you grow up like that, you have to be a little bit neurotic about social interactions. Like you study how people interact with each other and what's normal so you can fit in. And that is definitely, I don't even think I knew I was doing it at the time, but it down the road gave me this sensitivity to what's going on in their mind, how, like, did they seem uncomfortable? How can I welcome them and make them feel comfortable? And that reading of people was a survival technique when I was an awkward middle schooler, and now it's become how I make a living. So
your informal education, almost, your processing of this started when you were a child. Where did you grow up? Where was the Italian family gatherings? Where was it?
That was New Jersey.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
that is bizarre. So I'm born and raised from New Jersey. Only been in DC 2 years, and I had to claw my way out of New Jersey. Like I didn't want to leave. So that's crazy. I didn't know that when we first met.
I'm not from, so I'm a military brat.
But you were born in Jersey, or
no? I was born in North Carolina, and I moved like 8 times before we settled down in the DC area. Okay. But we would just go back to New Jersey every year for this particular event. Okay. So. I think when you move around a lot, there's a lot of great parts to it, but you search for a cultural root. Yeah. And for me, that root was partially and probably primarily in New Jersey. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's go to college, and like that senior year you got the diploma and you graduated. What was that like? Was it successful or was it question mark? Like what was that like?
It was a huge relief. Part of that was I was an athlete in college, and I felt like I didn't know how hard I was working until I could graduate and kind of stick my head above water. And I hadn't been focused on thinking about what I should do after college because I was just focused on getting through college. So I actually took a year to figure things out. I was a nanny, I was a substitute teacher, I did a Guatemala internship, I studied for the LSAT. Wow. But I think when I look back on it, I had sold myself on law school without knowing really what the practice of law was. This was in 2007. You would read something in the New York Times every couple of months about how much money associates were making without even really trying. And I thought, oh, well, great. Like, I love changing language to be persuasive. I think that's what lawyers do. And I also love money. So like, that sounds great.
We all do at like 21, 22 years old, right?
Yeah, you're finally in the position to make money, and 6 figures sounds like just enough, right? So, and I think I sold myself too early because there were some opportunities that, looking back, would have been really cool to take further. I was in a rush to grow up and a rush to have that white collar job that now when I hear of young people considering law school right out of college, I kind of encourage them to at least shadow attorneys, get to know the field, because it is a big investment and candidly one that I'll be paying off for a long time. So, yeah.
So you went to Notre Dame, and what was your undergraduate degree? And did it correlate to you going to law school, or what was the undergraduate degree?
It was classics. So classics is ancient Greek and Latin languages. So if you're like, man,
like, what do you do with that? Like,
right, that's what my parents said. So it's a great pre-recession major if you're planning to go into law or consulting. Okay. It is very wonky. One of the things I loved about it is you learn how manipulable language is. And so as someone who's always loved to write on the side, that's a really great training for being sensitive to sentence structure and word choice and all these geeky things. Yeah. Also, though, I think that the Greeks got a lot of stuff right about living 4,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago.
So?
Like the way they talk about how like war and peace and our appetite for both, that kind of goes back and forth. Men's fear of women, women's ability to manipulate men. Like a lot of these themes, like justice and how that plays out in a society, a lot of these themes the Greeks addressed and got it. And then getting that foundation in, I don't know, like civilization as a whole through the poetry of Homer, I feel like that was really special. So even though it's a little bit of a fluffy humanities major, I think it gave me a well-roundedness on some of the big picture things that other majors wouldn't have.
Did you realize that in 2006, 7, 8? Like, did you realize now looking back, you can say what you just said? Like, did you realize that degree helped you out?
I had been told that. I mean, I had been told that it doesn't really matter what you studied, that there's a lot of things that you hear about when your career starts before a recession and then continues after one. So now I don't think that's as true. If someone were to major in classics, I don't think I would discourage them because I geekily love it, but I do think it matters what you studied, or at least what you go on to study on your own. Your education certainly doesn't stop after college anymore.
Yeah, that's a great point. So what was your first job? Did you go into law school and then were you paralegaling, or what was the first job, the first paycheck?
The first paycheck was in college. It was a legal assistant position for a defense contractor. And so that was the first paycheck. The first full-time job would have been like non-internship.
Yeah.
Was a
like
judicial
salary job. Yeah.
Salary job. So it was a judicial clerkship after law school for Judge Carpenter on the Superior Court of Delaware. If you're not familiar with law and how that rigmarole works, after law school, some people elect to work for a judge, and it's kind of like an apprenticeship. You can get your law degree and pass the bar, but you're not technically practicing yet, but it's understood that it's only a 1-year thing. Yeah. Even in law school, I wasn't sure if law was for me. I started to really get excited about entrepreneurship. And so I had started a business on my 3rd year, and it like wasn't making any money. I created a Learn to Row video, and I sold exactly 1 copy to online, and then 20 copies to my mom. Yeah, she's a great customer.
Families are great.
Families are great. Yeah. I was like, you're inflating my numbers, Mom. Stop. Yeah. And then someone was like, you're not going to be able to pay the loans with this, Jess. And I was like, you're right. So I took the clerkship to figure out, maybe I do want to do law, and if so, this will set me up right. And if I don't, it's only a year. I'm not quitting anything early.
Yeah. So then you had a couple stepping stones to get you to DC, and what was the job you just left?
That was my 2nd job in DC, and I was in events and partnerships for an advocacy organization that's based in Chinatown and works to support entrepreneurs. So there's a lot of interest in it. I think they're going to go on to do some really great things. Yeah.
Cool. So we can start getting into it. So for me, I grappled with there were points in my career that I loved what I did, but also I didn't necessarily love the leadership or management I was working for, the culture I was in. Yeah. And then I was also tearing at the side hustle, the niche movement, but like I didn't figure out when or how should I do this. Yeah. So what you're doing now and how you launch yourself full time as an entrepreneur, was it the I hate my life so much and I hate what I was doing, or was it the passion of Curated Table that was driving you, or was it a little bit of both?
A little bit of both, and a lot of impulsive behavior, probably. So I started Curated Table in 2012, and I had no idea that it was a business. I just wanted to help people meet one another. And so I'm a very avid online dater. I think it's cool how we're using all these digital tools to connect. And I knew from all my online dating that there's a lot of good people out there who are just socially bored and want to expand their social circles. So I plucked people from OkCupid. This was kind of pre-Tinder, so OkCupid was where everyone was, and asked them, hey, I'm picking people who just have cool profiles. I'm not trying to matchmake you're gay, you're straight, you're male, you're female. I just want to get dinner. And they said yes. And so that's where Curated Table started, and I started doing that in different cities. I put that aside. I was able to use that and put it on my resume as hey, I did this thing of my own accord. That's what helped me transition out of law into a different field, into content strategy and product development. Once I was in there, I was so grateful to have the opportunity to be in a non-law job that paid me all right, that I was like, I don't want to screw up this opportunity by distracting myself with a big time suck, which is Curated Table, as much as I loved it. So I put it aside. So it's not that I was working on this continuously, and that's kind of a point I want to make, that we're taught that the narrative is you have your side hustle and you just build it in a nice smooth slope over a year. But mine was very much like fits and spurts. I iterated on the concept within the company, and then I changed roles, and then to the organization I just left. And then I think I was unsatisfied. I wasn't as creative in that organization as I wanted to be. So that's how I started writing.
Yeah.
The writing led to conversations with people here in Crystal City. Someone said, I want to start a supper club here. I said, I used to do this thing called Curated Table. And she said, would you do it here? And I immediately got like this buoyed by excitement and at the same time feeling drained by like, it just takes a lot of time to do it right.
Yeah.
And so I said, would you pay me? And she said, yeah, like we could find that. And then I thought.
So it kind of reignited.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was kind of my light bulb moment of like, I never thought of that as a viable business model, that it could continue to be free for participants, which I think is really important for some of the goals, but something that I could do full time.
So a lot of things I heard that could be useful advice, whether it's for people in the audience or watching, is one, the first thing I heard you say is the side hustle in 2012-13 actually helped you get out of law and into a new industry.
Yeah.
So that helped you right there, even though whether it was paying the bills or this big lavish thing, it already helped, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And then the second thing I heard is, and you know, I'm a big believer in this, is you put out content. You put yourself out there. You did it through writing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I might do video or audio, or people might do it differently, but you did writing, which is what I said is how we met. So are you a big believer in putting out content and kind of when you open up yourself to the world will reciprocate?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. I think writing for money is a terrible way to make a living. Just people don't value content. Yeah. People don't value content with money. However, I've been really surprised at how my writing has garnered opportunities to speak, to start a business essentially, and even just like coffees with interesting people. You don't know who's reading. It's like kind of cool. There are some bored, influential people on the internet, and if they like what you're putting out, and also if you're putting out something that's genuine. I'll say that I started writing on Medium, and I was like, I need to have a professional brand. What is my focus?
Needs to have a nice ribbon on it. Like it needs to be so polished, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then, but I was in denial about what my passion is, because my passion is a lot about like relationships and dating and community building. The one thing I don't shut up about is like dating and how we're meeting one another. I was very hesitant to put that out there. But once I did, it's like somehow your writing becomes different. When you're writing about something you're really passionate about, people can tell and people respond in a way that's just totally, it's not just likes, they get your excitement through the screen and they want to engage with that.
You don't have to answer this, but I'm very fascinated. People are very obsessed with, well, I'm putting out content and getting 5 people to watch it or 10 people to read it or no one. Like, I'm very curious, like, what's a piece of content? Like, is it 100 views, 200 views? Like, where are you at? And I just kind of want to give the spectrum of like, because I know for me, I put out some things where people will be like, oh, I watched it. I'm like, well, that had 20 views. You're one of 20 and you can't like, but I'm very curious, what are your, like, if you don't shine in some of your analytics or a broad sense of that?
Yeah.
So I think some people get so caught up in we need to have 1 million followers.
Yeah, so Medium is where I've got the most followers. I have 1,800 followers on Medium. My best performing piece is about this one time that I asked a guy out with a PowerPoint presentation. And I was like cleaning my computer files and I found this PowerPoint and I was like, that might be fun to share with the world, right? And so, but
you put yourself out there.
Yeah, and that got, I think that's in the neighborhood of 37,000 views at this point.
Wow, good for you.
Right after that, then the intimidating thing is you're like, oh my gosh, I have a following now. Like I've gotten mentioned places. I published something else, and I think it might have gotten like 500 views, and. I think that failure, but I think that bomb right afterwards was really healthy in a way, because not every piece that I'm going to publish is going to be like a hit. If it is, then I feel like I'm probably doing something monotone or I've stopped experimenting. So I try to look at everything as, okay, what am I kind of testing here? And maybe this has less graphical component, but it's more like a personal story. Maybe this is more humorous or serious. So if you treat every piece of content as a learning opportunity, that's still a pretty genuine expression of yourself. I feel like that's still going to open doors regardless of how many views you get. You're going to learn from that.
Yeah. So what if people are thinking, well, I'm kind of in an industry or a job that it's okay. Like, why should I put myself out there? Or why should I create content? Or why should I build my personal brand? what would you say to them? What is your why? Because you're talking about you're doing dating, but now you're doing Curated Table.
Yeah.
It kind of is in the same spectrum, but it's different. So why should people, if they're looking to make a difference or find their niche, start putting out content?
I think it's especially important to give yourself flexibility. You're not always going to get the experience that you need to build upon to get you to the place you want in whatever your day job is. And so, like, when I thought, boy, it'd be cool to do dinner parties for a living, but that's like only Martha Stewart gets to do that. So like that job's taken.
With Snoop Dogg now.
Right. And now Snoop Dogg, what can't he do, right? But I was able to do that just by like stepping out and doing it for free with people I met on the internet, right? So the importance of building your brand and generating content is because it gives you, you become a fulcrum from which you can pivot into any opportunity you want to work towards. Without that, you're always going to pivot at the behest of whatever someone else gave you as responsibilities or to-do lists at your day job.
Cool. So I don't want to say that you're just starting out, because clearly you're not. But what was that moment, and I think you and I talked maybe 2 weeks ago, what was that moment of I'm pulling the Band-Aid off and I'm doing this?
Yeah. It had been nagging at me for a while, and a couple things just started to pile on that bothered me. Not even related to my job, though. I will say I wasn't feeling like my job took advantage of my particular strengths, and nor was I like the greatest at what my job needed to do. So there was that fit. Whenever I looked at job descriptions, I thought, I'm fitting a square peg into a round hole here. Like, yeah, I guess I could kind of do that. Like, I'm not using that skill, and I would have to learn that skill. And I would read about these founders, and I'd get jealous, honestly. Whenever I met someone who had their own business and was doing their own thing, I got really, admired them, but I was like, when is it my turn? And then it all kind of came to a head. I had a regular check-in with my boss, but it just didn't go very well. And he said, very maturely, was like, hey, can we address this tension? And I thought, okay, well, I'm either going to lie to him now and in 2 weeks or a month I'll quit, or just like, let's do it. Now's the time. So I'm very lucky in that they were understanding. Transition went really well. It was very professional. But it was impulsive. It's not like I set a date on my calendar and started budgeting 6 months out. I definitely didn't. Financially, I don't know if I'm in a great, perfect place to start a business, but maybe if you think you're in a perfect place to start a business financially and that you have the perfect idea, I think you might be a sociopath. I think you should be a little scared of something.
The piece of advice I'm going to offer to you, and Courtney will test this, and my friend Stacy, if you're watching this, I kept saying the same thing, like, what if I only do this, or what if I only have 3 months of runway, or what if I don't have a budget? But she kept saying, well, what if you're doing better than that? Whether it's financially, successfully, personally, time, what work-life balance. And that really stuck with me, because I'm like, well, what if the other case is true? You soar. The one thing I do want to address, and there are some young people in the audience, and our audience that watches our content is young. I think the number one thing you did is you embraced that tension. Because you could, like you said, you could have walked out, stuck out another 3 months, 6 months, would have been awkwardness and tension on both sides, but you were like, let's do this.
Yeah.
And I think in a day of technology and we're down on our phones, I think that piece of, and that might take experience working in the workforce in the real world, but I think that's a very valid point of advocate for yourself, but also realize when it's time to just call it quits.
Yeah.
And whether it's going to another job or whatever it might be, and I think sometimes we just ride it out because we don't want to face that crucial conversation.
Yeah, and one thing that I've learned so important is you don't know who in your network is going to become relevant again, ever. Mm-hmm. You never, and it surprises you the longer you're working. So, they say don't burn bridges, but that's so true. You don't need to be their favorite person when you leave. I think when I was at my first job out of the clerkship, I think I did really well there, and they really liked me, and they probably still like me. I think this last job, maybe they're like, Jessica's all right. And you can't ask to be everyone's favorite, but you at least can decide, okay, I don't want them thinking, God, she was using us, or she was just getting a paycheck and not even checked in when she came to work. And it was getting to the point where if I stayed longer, that's what they would have thought. So
let's get into the crux of Curated Table. There's some of us in this room that have experienced Curated Table. What are your hopes and dreams, and to the audience, what is it? What do you envision Curated Table is going to be in a year to 5 years from now?
Yeah, so Curated Table is a social events company. What I'm really passionate about is thinking through creative ideas that connect communities and give us more ways to meet one another and broaden our social networks offline. Right now, I'm doing that through consulting with individual clients that have an event coming up or want to think of events as a marketing play, especially small serial events that build on one another. That's the opportunity that I'm running towards. I'm really curious. I've got that track, and that's kind of like one-off projects. At the same time, I'm really curious to start approaching residences, and I'll kind of admit blatantly that I've learned a lot of this idea comes a lot from living at WeLive, where there's a lot of residential programming, and I've built such a community here. I wonder if there is a demand in other places for that kind of turnkey programming, and if that's something that I can bring my expertise and my network to help. So those are two tracks that I'm going to explore. I would love it if, as I think people are getting tired of online dating apps and tired of happy hours where you're just kind of like bumping elbows with people at the cheese table and not really meeting anyone. I would love it if, like, I could give the world more dinner parties, just infinite dinner parties, to always have a place to go for dinner and like people to eat with and people to connect with, and to feel safe being vulnerable in that place. That'd be really cool. And the nice thing is, I know there's a lot of competition, like a lot of the dinner party movement is growing, but there's no losing. Like, if someone's like, I'm not gonna go to your dinner party, I have like 4 other dinner parties to go to. That's a world I wanna live in, I'm okay with that.
I like what you're doing. You're scaling the unscalable. And I'm sure you're gonna get a ton of questions, Jessica, how are you gonna scale this? But like, keep doing, I think the more you keep doing this and playing the spectrum of going away from the digital tools and the digital apps and doing this stuff, I really think it's just time and effort and you, and then how you can build out with a team when you get to that point.
Yeah, I also think we're very obsessed with scaling businesses these days.
But
you don't need to create a business that scales.
You don't need $1 million,
well.
$2 million. You don't need that.
Yeah, if I can live a lifestyle that is good for me and be able to work on my own schedule, that's the biggest goal right now. And then, I mean, scaling would be fun. I'm not saying no to it, but I would encourage people not to like not start something because they think, well, this isn't going to be, IPO in 3 years.
You don't need that.
No.
And I'm sure you already experienced it, but like, so Jessica took over our Snapchat account yesterday, and I remember you were like, I'm working from here, I'm working from there, and then you're like, I'm going out on a run at 12 o'clock. Like, you don't understand, and I didn't realize this, like having 9 to 5, like when you have that freedom to work when and how you want in spaces you want, like, it opened up doors. I'm not saying entrepreneurship or solopreneurship is the way to go, but I think having that freedom of work-life balance is really crucial. One plug I want to make right now, and I'm pointing this into the camera, is I have a lot of higher education, student affairs, and residence life folks that are attracted to niche and what we're doing. I see you as a transferable skill to come in and train them on what you're doing in adult neighborhoods, but with residents. Like, how can you curate college students and different groups together? I really think that's a valuable asset, and I'm giving you a plug right now. Anybody out there watching should bring Jessica in for some training,
do kids
workshops.
Not get with each other anymore?
There's programming, but like, I feel like this curated piece, because they're all like, well, everybody from Building 101, let's get together. But like, I think it'd be interesting from a programming training model of how you could flip that.
Let's do it.
So we're gonna talk about this after.
Okay, sounds good.
You told me I could kind of go this route. What are your fears? Because I still have them. I've been out mine 2 years, and I'm scared shitless every day. What are you scared shitless about?
Definitely the money part.
Yep.
So I have a lot of student loan debt from law school, and baked into my finances now is keeping up with those payments. But just crossing my fingers that works out is part of it. Other than that, let's see. I think coming across as someone who's offering something that's not really substantive. It's hard to tell. Sometimes you'll meet a lot of solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, and you ask what they do, and it's kind of like, especially in events, there are people who just like throw conferences, and they're like motivational. And not to say that there's not some people doing that's really valuable, but it's important for me to always have a tangible, like I want to solve a problem or make people really happy in a way that they can share with others. I don't know that. Yeah. So being someone of substance is important, and then
that you're not just an event planner.
I don't want to. There might be easy money in some of that I don't know about or something. But my fear is maybe being suckered in a direction that I really isn't true to myself, just so I can make those financial ends meet. And then also, those might be the top fears, I think, yeah.
What's your hope?
The hope, I would love to scale. I would love to hire talented people of any race, religion, creed, or age. I would love to maybe use some dollars to fund Democratic candidates in the next election cycle, frankly. But aside from that, though, I think I'd really love to be I'd love to set a tone for young women entrepreneurs, especially, to be confident, to be hungry for money, and to like run towards leadership opportunities. Because I think that example exists in some isolated figures, and we're really lucky to have them. But I want to see more women like getting to the table and saying, I'm not going to do this for free. Let's talk about budget, and not being afraid of that.
Cool. I think that'll come in a lot of different ways, and I think you're gonna have a lot of opportunities that open up. We talked about this before we started. One thing I think you might pick up on it with Jessica is she's willing to professionally stalk and figure out who the influencers are, who are the thought leaders, who are the people that should be in the room. But I told you this. I talked a couple of weeks ago to some students, and I used the word audacity. Having the audacity to not be afraid to send that tweet, send a LinkedIn message, go to that event, shake hands, exchange cards, whatever it is. Can you give me a high-level reason of why that's so important in today's job market, not to rely on a resume? But can you go to the other spectrum, give me something very tactile and very practical, like how would you go about that to a 22-year-old or a 25-year-old that's like, you're right, I do need to do this?
Yeah. So that was a big part of my life when I was in my judicial clerkship and looking at non-law jobs. I had no idea what I wanted to do that wasn't law. Like I had no full-time experience aside from the judicial clerkship. So approaching networking as something that's a learning experience, not like, oh, this company's hiring, I should meet someone there. Although you can target people that way. But every conversation that I had was postured as, I'm a little confused professionally. I would love to learn from you. You've just done cool things. Do you mind like getting coffee for 20 minutes? That's like so key. And the thing that you realize in just a couple short years when some of you are in the position that others are asking you to coffee is it is the most flattering thing in the world. You are making someone's day by being like, you're cool enough at your job that I want to have coffee with you and get your advice. It's not audacious to ask that. You're not asking them, hey, can you put your neck on the line for me, a stranger, and try to get my resume in front of someone? That can come later. And in fact, if you do a good enough job of being a good listener, of being curious and respectful, most of the time they're going to be like, by the way, like, how can I help? Like, do you want an introduction? Remember that everyone you meet has a network that goes way beyond the four walls of their corporation too. There have been plenty of people that I met because I thought, I don't know, maybe I wanted to go into corporate recruiting, and I didn't, but he or she said, oh, well, actually you should talk to someone in media or whatever it might be, and that's how that next thing was made. So that was kind of a scattered answer to your question, but I think, I don't think I've ever gotten a job based on my resume, but I most certainly have gotten a job based on having coffee with someone or even with a friend of someone who was able to kind of pass my name along. The world is so relational, and so it's a numbers game. The more genuine relationships you can make, no matter where they come from, as long as you're bringing like a heartfelt curiosity to it, you're always going to win. And even if they lead to nowhere, it's practice. So you're good at it, and you have your questions. You're not nervous when you meet people. It's reps. So
quick scenario. Somebody in the audience finds somebody they want to reach out to.
Yeah.
What should they say or do? Whether it's through social media or through an email, or through, give me something practically. What would you say? Like if someone approached you, what would get on your radar?
Definitely trying to get through my inbox. And you can be pretty savvy about reverse engineering emails and just go for it. So say if there's if it's a small company, say like less than 10 people, and the helpline is like info@acme.org, probably peter@acme.org is going to get you like Peter. Yep. So little hacks like that, try a couple. The worst that you can do is the wrong ones get to a wrong inbox. Try to go straight through their inbox. Only ask for coffee or a call, something low, right? If there's a job you want, don't mention it. So subject line important, like would love to grab coffee or would love to hear about your professional path. That's my language. I always say like, I would love to just hear about your professional path. Like give me your bio. Mention when you write them, let them know something about why you think they're cool. So not just like, hey, I'm talking to as many people as I can and you're number 56, so let's get coffee. But instead like, hey, I saw on LinkedIn that you actually went from a non-law job to a law job, or you transitioned into education with no prior experience. I'm thinking of doing the same, and I'm just trying to talk to as many people as I can, and you really stood out to me. And then give a specific date and place ask that's close to their office, so that they don't have to do the email like, yeah, what dates work for you? Just say like, if you're willing, like Wednesday of next week at 3:30 at the Aubin Pan, maybe it could be a great place to meet. Yeah. Follow up is another thing. The job I got right out of my judicial clerkship, I think I had to email her 3 times. She was just super busy. The important people are really busy. So I love Boomerang, which is an app for Gmail, because every time I send it, I just say, send this back to me in 2 weeks if no one has responded. So I don't have to worry about like, oh, did I follow up? It'll come back to my inbox. And then just be polite, like, hey, just want to make sure I didn't drop the ball here. Would love to have coffee again. If after that they don't say anything, give it a month or 2, and maybe that's just not your person, and that's okay too. Yeah. But it's a art of persistence, yeah.
And how do you find those people?
I pay for LinkedIn Premium, or I do when I'm job searching, and it's $60 a month, but the ability to search anonymously so you can stalk however freely you would like.
Professional stuff.
You can see who's looking at you. So there's been a lot of times where I've just seen someone looking at me and I'll message them and say, hey, I noticed you're looking at, like, don't make them feel weird. Be like, it's totally cool. Like, I would look at my profile if I was you, but say, I'd love to catch up and find out what you do. That's happened a couple times. But you can also filter, like, I want to find people from my college who are in this industry, and maybe there's a specific company name that they have worked at in the past. Mm-hmm. So the ability to do that was really helpful for me when I was networking and job searching.
Cool. Let me just check time. So 2 last quick questions, and I told you I'd be asking this. What would you tell your, let's say, 22-year-old self? You just graduated. What would you tell Jessica when you just graduated?
You're definitely not going to get married soon, so stop thinking about that. Take your mind off of that goal. I think I would tell her to go. I had an opportunity to work in Guatemala for like a really low-paying internship, but with a great organization. I regret not taking that. I would tell her, go to Guatemala. And part of me wants to say don't go to law school just because of the financial burden of that, but at the same time, I learned a lot of skills, and my network is amazing because of law school. So I don't know that I would say that, but I would say like the entrepreneurship instinct, there's something there. Like if something keeps nagging at you, it's probably because there's something there you really need to explore to feel like you've gotten the most out of it.
Yeah. And what else would you like to share? I mean, this is your time.
Wow. Well, I mean, first of all, I'm so flattered that y'all showed up to listen to me speak, and I hope you've gotten something of value out of it. I think that the one thing I would share is be vulnerable more often than you think. That leads to people really liking you and feeling like they can trust you and wanting to work with you. Whether that means just telling someone I feel a little lost in my career, or not having the swagger. Like so often relationships for me have deepened when I've been like, I'm a little bit scared of what I'm doing. Like I'd love your advice. That's where the sweet spot of so many connections are, and that people will start to really stick their necks out for you just because you've asked and you've said, I need a little help. And if be grateful for that help when you get it.
Cool. I'd love to turn some Q&A for a few minutes, but let's give her a big round of applause for Jessica. Wish her the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being my first guest in this crazy concoction.
So fun.
But to you guys, I'd really comments and questions of what Jessica said, maybe hit the emotional heart center, or questions you have for Jessica. Go back there. And just if you could just say your name too, please.
I'm Candace. I am that 22-year-old that's out of college.
Congrats.
Realizing how expensive it is to be a person.
Yeah.
Going along with that, I have two questions. One, something you stood out, that stood out to me that you said was that it takes a lot of time to do it right. So how do you have that side hustle, given the responsibilities and the weight and the energy that it takes to commit to a 9 to 5? And then my second question is, I'm a writer. I recently started releasing my work like 4 days ago on Medium.
Love
Medium's so good.
So it's been fun and scary. I'm getting a lot of great feedback, but I'd like to know, like, how do you expand your network on Medium? I know how to get more Twitter followers. I know how to, get more Facebook friends, but Medium is kind of like a new platform for me. And what other platforms would you recommend for writers?
Yeah, Medium is my favorite right now, and in terms of growing your following, I think the first is just great content and frequency. So I try to get like a post a week if I can. It's been a little bit tough lately, but in the early days, having 1 or 2 posts a week was important. If nothing else, you get better as a writer through that practice. Always write for a publication on Medium. I love The Mission by Chad Grills. I spoke with him as an editor, and he's just got some really cool thoughts on freelancing. The Mission tends to focus on content that has some kind of a teaching point, but also a personal story. And if you need an introduction, come see me afterwards. I'm happy to introduce you to Chad. And then when you're first starting to post, be very engaged in the community. So read other posts, comment on them, give like good meaty comments. People read those and they like them, especially like some of the bigger authors with huge followings. If you give them a comment that's like, wow, this really got me thinking X and I'm wondering what you think, that gives them another opportunity to write. They're going to want to keep you on their radar because you like got their thought process going.
And their community will too.
Yeah,
They'll
exactly. You're spurring a dialogue.
They'll siphon off.
Mm-hmm, totally. So I think those are really, that's how you start to grow following on Medium. And not to get discouraged, because even if, like me, you've grown some sort of a following, you can never tell, like some posts do really well and others just kind of flatline. It's totally okay. Like long tail, you're going to get some cool bites out of that if you keep up. In terms of finding the time and energy to do a side hustle in the 9 to 5, it takes, you'll sacrifice, right? Like I am a strong believer in still maintaining balance. So every day trying to take care of myself physically, mentally, and professionally, right? So I don't like that narrative of, oh, if you're really hustling, you're working until 2 a.m. and you're like gaining weight and you're mainlining Red Bull. I've always continued to work out, not competitively, but just maintenance-wise. I love sleep. I know my work quality is really poor after 8, so I don't push it. I just respect that. Sleep, I get up early and I work. And you have to say no to opportunities. Not everything, because your friends in your network are still really important to say hi to, but like if you just saw the same group of friends for brunch and they're going out the next weekend, but you're a little behind on some goals, go for it. But a huge thing too is forgiving yourself when you lapse. Like if you set a project aside, that's okay. You can come back to things more than you know. I didn't think that I would be coming back to Curated Table like this, and I'm really happy to. If you're writing a couple times a week and then you just hit a rough week and it's 2 weeks, it's okay. Like a lapse doesn't mean that you have to quit something. And I think forgiving myself for not being on a perfect schedule has been why, in the long term, I've been able to do what I want. Sure.
Solid advice, really good stuff. What else?
So
Jen.
I know I'm an engineer, so writing does not naturally come to me. Because I'm an engineer, I think I have lots of great ideas, but I just can't put them on paper. Do you have any advice for the people out there who maybe want to put themselves out there, but writing isn't their strong suit? Are there any versions of putting yourself out there that weren't writing that you just thought, oh man, that's so cool, like I can't believe they're doing that?
Yeah, podcasting for sure. I got a $60 Meteor mic off Amazon and downloaded Audacity because it's free. And then I created a podcast for 2 episodes until I figured out it's a lot of work. But if I wasn't also writing and doing Curated Table, I think that could be a thing that I really get into. Podcasting is also cool because just like when you're emailing people for professional advice, everyone loves to be have a chance to talk. I mean, I'm loving this. loving this. So to be able to give that gift to someone else and say like, hey, you're doing really cool things, can I interview you? You get so much social capital by being the one to facilitate that conversation. So podcasting can be a really powerful tool for building your network and putting yourself out there. And then like infographics, that was my bread and butter for a couple of years. And if you can put together a good flow chart to explain different things in the world, you'd be surprised at how viral that can be. And there's a lot of people that would rather not read 500 words and would rather see a picture that explains it all.
Do you mind if I piggyback on a few suggestions
Yeah,
for
please.
Jen? I would say, I don't know engineering-wise, like if you're in front of a computer a lot or what you're designing or things like that, but I think screen sharing your work sometimes and doing an audio over what you're doing, if it's on a laptop or something, and putting that content into YouTube or a live feed. I also think SlideShare is still kind of there's some virality there. You might create a slideshow presentation of what you did on a project. And then just going out and doing what Jessica's doing, going out and speaking at a conference, whether it's free, paid, 20 minutes, an hour, and getting somebody to film it with a camera or something, that's content. And it's very, not a lot of friction in between. You just get somebody to set up an iPhone. I think that's the other way too. That could just be quick. So, quite awesome.
Yeah, so you're talking about a curated table being more than just dinner parties. Do you ever see it evolving into something that brings together competing social groups or people who are kind of boring in some ways?
Someone brought that up recently, and I think that when you make that the point of the dinner, that might be counterproductive. I think the more beautiful thing is when you can get people together, and maybe it's not always for dinner parties. It could be lunch, but no, I'm just that was a joke. But maybe for any kind of small group, if they don't know how different they are, and they learn like they're having fun, they're making great connections, they're seeing other people as humans with cool opinions and thoughts, and then they learn like, oh, you voted for who, or whatever that might be. That I think is going to go a lot further towards helping people like find the humanity in one another despite their differences than saying like, you're different, find what you have in common, go, right? I think it's when you say, you've got a lot in common, oh, I guess you're a little bit different. Like that the relationship tends to be already strong enough to withstand that difference. So I don't think at this point that I would purposefully call a dinner outright, like we're bringing together two competing factions for, a fish fry. I think it'd be more subtle about it.
I have a question. My name is Kelly, and I wanted to know if there are any upcoming events by Curated Table for females wanting to go into entrepreneurship or like entrepreneurship females, anything like that that you're working on?
Maybe for college age students.
Yeah. College age students.
Yeah, for you, Kelly.
So I don't have anything on the calendar. One thing that I've had to, so I'll say this. When I was doing it as a side hustle and not worrying about money, I would be like, that sounds fun, let's do it. But one thing that I'm being pretty strict about is that I think a lot of female entrepreneurs want to just give and share their passion in their project. But I'm pretty insistent on finding paying clients. However, I'm also pretty good at sales. So I think that, if we can find an organization that wants to take the credit for convening passionate, entrepreneurial-driven women for a lunch, and if those women are cool with sharing their experience in content and blog posts and organically spreading the word about that organization, it's kind of my business model, and it's out there. So if you know of an organization that might be willing to sponsor, and I can think of a few locally, let's build it. Yeah. Cool. I'll give you a little kickback too.
We'll go there and then we'll go Heidi. Okay.
Hi Jessica, my name is Ali. I work as an independent consultant in the area.
Cool.
So my question is, and this is kind of a hypothetical scenario, if let's say all of your networks were erased, you have no contacts, nothing on social media, nothing personally on your phone, no contacts, what are some of the steps that you would take to build your network from scratch?
Wow, that's such a great question. I would turn to LinkedIn. I would start finding people who seemed cool. LinkedIn, Twitter, local bloggers, search for people who are using the hashtag of Crystal City or wherever I happen to be on Twitter, on Instagram. and on Facebook, and reach out to those people and say, I'm new to the area, and trying to find people who have a good finger on the pulse of what's going on here. You seem like you do. You could kind of go a couple ways from that. The first could be, do you mind grabbing coffee and just letting me know what you know about the area? The second could be, what publications or accounts do you follow? I'm building my Twitter list from scratch here. But I would also say the third could be, instead of asking for something, having something to give. So that's, when I started Curated Table originally, I didn't have a network in Philly. I was living in Delaware. Philly was 45 minutes away, but it's where all the cool kids were. By being the person who has a give, who's like, I'm organizing this and I'd love for you to come, whether it's a dinner party or a game night or whatever, no one's gonna say, or people are gonna say no, that's wrong, but some people are gonna say yes, and they're gonna be really grateful because you're taking a leadership role where most people assume that you'll be seeking others to lead you into like a new social situation. So I do believe that one of the best ways to network in an area you're new to is to host, and the few people you meet, that way as you meet people around the streets, you always have like a chit to play. You're always like, oh, it's so cool to meet. Actually, I'm throwing like a wine tasting. You should just come by to that. And you don't have to wait for another like networking event in that industry to see them again. You have a way to get that repeated contact and build on that.
The wine party you did like 2 weeks ago that I stopped by, I think there were 15, 20-ish people. And I remember, I don't know if anything comes of it, you don't have to share, but like one of the woman there was like, I don't know if she ran an art gallery, she did something, she's like, she was basically almost enticing, like, I need to hire you to bring together people I want at my gallery. And like that was 15, 20 people, it was a random Tuesday night, and like that might or may not lead to a business opportunity.
I actually did get a business opportunity.
Cool.
Jim was here, the CEO of Suniva, stopped by and said, oh my gosh, our launch party's in 2 weeks, do you do events? And I said,
Jim's still here, Jim left, I think.
Yeah. I said, hell yeah, I do. And so so we put that contract together. So I
Good for you.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
through a wine party and business.
There's some Suniva on the corner.
Yeah,
Don't get it mixed
Suniva's
up with
actually legit
Illy.
great too. It's I really
Yeah.
loved what they're putting out.
Heidi, I know you had a question.
My name's Heidi. I thought a lot of the things that you said today really spoke to me because I'm a recent graduate myself. I'm 22 as well. And I've joined the niche movement because I am doing my own career exploration at the moment as well. And I'm more interested now in just the sort of community because I've learned more about it. The questions I have for you is, because of your career transition, in what ways have you felt more connected to your most authentic self? And then the other question I had for you was, during the process of creating Curated Tables, were the doubts you had for yourself along the way, how did you cope? How did you deal with that? What were your ways to bring yourself back to center, to come back to your project?
Wow, great questions.
Deep.
In terms of feeling like my more authentic self, I think I kind of see this parallel with my writing, where early when I was writing, I wanted to find like a blog theme that was professional and that I could be known for. And I wasn't so much asking myself like, right, but if you could write anything, what would you write? And similarly, I look at a lot of my career trajectory and it's been like, oh, right, I want to wear a suit. Literally, I wanted to go to law school because I loved the sound of high heels on marble floors. I thought that was powerful. And I was like, I just want somewhere where I can do that. So short-sighted. And so always thinking externally, like, I want people to perceive me as. And it was when I started thinking, like, okay, but like, just what am I? And let's be honest with myself about, like, I'm not good at, like, plenty of things. I'm okay at plenty of things, and then I'm really, really good at a small number of things. What if we just went in that direction? And so I definitely feel like right now I'm like my most authentic self that I've ever been, and it's been really encouraging. I think the reaction that I get is very positive. It's almost just like in writing, where all of a sudden it's like, somehow something changed, and you can tell about me that I'm just in a different place, and you're responding to that in a way that's very rewarding. I don't know if I could have gotten to this place though without kind of knocking against the walls and trying to find myself along the way. So I don't look at any of that as like, gosh, I was just biding my time until I found my authentic self. I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be able to do what I do without all of those networks and weird places because I bopped around so much that now I can bring together. One of the nice things about being confused professionally is that you make these networks and none of these people would know each other if they're on the straight and narrow path in their career. So you become the person who they're like, I don't know, do you know like a designer who does satellites? And I'm like, yeah, I do, and that's a really valuable position to own. And now as in events and trafficking and connections as I do, like I've kind of found a use for that. But I'm going off on a tangent. Your second question was about dealing with doubts, I think, right?
Of your own doubts when you were creating tables. What did you do? Like, what time did you set aside for yourself to bring yourself back to center? What practices did you do?
Yeah, there are lots of doubts. I do think that faking it till you make it is like trite, but there's some truth to just girding yourself and saying like, I could doubt, but I'm going to stay positive. I'm not going to be overblown in my confidence, but I'm just going to believe this is going to work. When I can tell I'm getting tired, I know that my work quality is going to be bad. So I'm wasting my business's time and my time by trying to push through that wall. And I let myself just have, like, give me a minute. And some of, like, whether that means vegging out in front of the TV, I love Chinese takeout. I guess I should be saying going for a long run, but that's not what I feel like doing when I just want to, like, take a break. But sometimes, like, I stopped Curated Table for a year before I started anything like it up again, and that was a completely different iteration of it. It wasn't really the original. And so I guess the point is, like, sometimes your doubts are so big that you need a long pause, and it's not just a night of TV, but time to really say, I have to come up for air and figure things out. And like, that's okay. That doesn't mean you're quitting. Like, life is really long, and I think when you're young, it feels like everything needs to happen now, and you want everything to happen now. But it's funny, like, the way things meander are setting this course that was like, oh, that all needed to happen. I feel like that's crappy advice to hear, though, because you're like, everyone tells me that. I don't want to do that.
That's the society we're living in, is like instant gratification. We want it now.
Yeah.
Like you were saying with apps, like you could meet somebody tonight, like just by swiping. Like,
yeah, I definitely
I think it comes into our
to, like, relax.
So it comes into our career though. It's like we get the job and like, I've been here 6 months. Why am I promoted? Why does my boss like? It's like, well, you got to be there's personal accountability.
Yeah.
And I was just talking about this with the one lady, Nancy Lyons, who was in the book. Is like there's personal accountability too. Like it's a two-way street, and there's patience. Like 22, I'm in my early, like we got years. Like, but I think if you put the work in and you knock around and you be vulnerable and everything you said.
Being self-aware.
Yeah.
I've consistently kept a journal, and I think that's really important too. You're not going to learn what you're really good at and what you're not good at unless you're constantly studying your own. Like, what's tugging at me? What am I really fighting with mentally right now? And getting to know yourself has also been really critical, I think.
Any last questions?
Hey, my name is Aaron. I'm professionally run two companies online. Development company and a construction company. But I guess my question kind of piggybacks on her question about those tough times and those doubts. But what's the real why behind it? I mean, I guess that'll kind of tie back into the real reason why you started everything. But when you have those times when you have to, take a pause or, like you say, take a break from it for about a year, what's the real, emotional reason behind coming back and actually, living out the journey?
Wow, such a good question. I think it's a theme that it's this like urge to introduce people and throw a party or somehow get people to connect or check out Bumble just to be like, how does this work? Why is this working? Like, recognizing in my life that this theme keeps popping up. It's not always in the form of Curated Table. Sometimes I'm just casually throwing a dinner party. It's not always in the form of a dinner party. Sometimes I'm like starting a lunch series within the company that I work at. But like, gosh, I keep on wanting to do this over and over again. This just verb of connecting is just all I want to do. And it bubbles up even when I'm like, I can't right now. It'll scoot out and be like, okay, but just host a wine tasting, right? Like, and so learning that about myself and coming to accept, like, yeah, I don't really know how this makes a career for me either, but I just want to connect. And I think other people, their words are like problem solving. Like, okay, you could tell me to organize something, but I'm going to look for what's wrong and I'm going to solve it. Like, I just love solving problems. That's not me. But my point is, like, I think each of us has, some people call it a passion, but I think it's less like, it's not always this fiery urge, but more like a theme that will always gnaw at you. And unless you're doing it in some
Hit you
form
at like
or
2
another,
a.m. or in the shower or on a bike ride.
yeah, you're
or run,
always
you're like,
noodling on it.
Yeah.
You love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hope that helps. Yeah.
Anything else from the amazing and engaging audience? I think there's been a diverse questions and really good answers. Anything else? Go ahead, Connor.
My name's Connor. I'm a freshman at George Washington University. Mr. Kevin is my mentor in class.
My wife's gonna have a field day.
How do you, I'm speaking personally, how do you kind of, when you're networking, when you're reaching out, when you're getting out of your comfort zone, how do you like get that sense of like, I'm just being annoying, like out of the way? Like how do people that come to you, how do you take like people that come to you for advice, and what do you respond with, and like what do you think when you get a question or you get someone reaches out to you?
Oh, it's the best feeling in the world. I love it. I love thinking that I could actually help someone with my scattered skill set and my network. So I welcome it. I do, but I kind of get where you're going at, like, because say you don't know this, but I'm at a networking event and I'm talking to a prospective client, and that's a pretty important conversation for me, but it maybe doesn't look that way, and you come up and you just want to say hi or ask something. And maybe your question is more like, how can you tell when the right chance, opportunity is there to break in? I think that the onus is, I would like to say, more on the people who are further along in their careers and have networked, to be able to politely say, like, I'd love to catch up. I need to talk with this person, but let me give you my card and let's have coffee later. But if they don't have the wherewithal or the graces to say that, you can always be the one to say, to kind of be meta about it and say, hey, I'm not sure if this is the right time to talk to you, but I would love to hear more about how you started doing this professionally. And that's when they can say, like, oh, no, this is great. Or they might be like, oh, yeah, like, that would be nice. And you can say, let me just give you my card, or do you have a card, and I'll follow up and thank them and say, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'll be in touch and make sure to find a time to schedule. So it doesn't have to always be in the moment, because I think that's where there's the most doubt about whether that moment is right. But you can always go up and just do, I think there's no harm in saying, can I ask for your card? This might not be the right time, but I'd love to follow up.
The higher the people you might be going to, the more busy they are and the more demand I think they get. Yeah. The more they get of this. So one, you definitely have to figure out a way to be tactful and stand out. And also realize maybe you don't go to the top fifth, the CEO. Maybe you go to the middle manager, the entry level person that then gets you that conversation or that meeting. Yeah. And one of the things that I listen to Tim Ferriss's podcast pretty much every week, and he said this in a recent podcast of he gets this. He's a big author and big thought leader and startup guru in San Fran. He gets people coming to him all the time. Everybody's like, let me give you the business card, let me give you my book, all this stuff. Someone came up to him and said, hey, Tim, I know you're super busy. He was in conversation like you were talking about. Someone had on a note card like 3 things that they thought would be relevant to Tim or why they want to talk. And he's like, hey, I know you don't have time, but just take this, read it in the hotel room later. And he like went home with it, and he went through his business cards like, oh, this guy, John, whatever, had 3 things, and he like actually read it and was able to digest it and then decided if he wanted to reach out to him. So it's another tactic.
Wow, that's sharp. If someone did that to me, I'd be like, you're more
knowing,
organized than I am.
Because it's going to happen tonight. It's 20 people here, but people are going to come up to you, and it might be just a loose connection. But if someone actually, hey, I know you have time to read this, and you get them back, and
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Any other questions before we just do a string of announcements, and then we can drink some more beer and pizza, and eat some pizza. Go ahead, Aaron.
My last question is, what you're doing now, if it works out exactly the way you see it, all cylinders fire, everything lines up perfectly, where do you see yourself? What's the highest level you see yourself achieving?
Board member, chairwoman of the board, and would love to just be able to give a lot of great, cool people jobs and jobs that involve helping other people meet one another, and set a good example for others. And then I'd also like to live 6 months here, 1 month abroad. Yeah, I think I'd like to explore more of Europe and work from there. So
You're going abroad, right?
I am. I'm experimenting with it now. I don't know if it'll work, but I'm going to embrace optimism.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll be working from Rome in January.
Good for you.
The hell of it. Yeah.
We'll be here for a while, kind of cleaning up and mingling and stuff like that. But a few things I want to say. Obviously, the first thing is thank you, Jessica, for being our first guest in this crazy thing. There's a handful of familiar faces. There's a lot of faces that I didn't get a chance to talk to, so I'd love to connect with you and feel a little bit more about WeWork, WeLive, and myself and what I do with the Richmond. But some quick announcements I think would be beneficial to you or some people in your network. I said this tonight. The Niche is very content driven. So we have a base of 30 contributing editors that write at will, and we generally post 2 times a week on content from networking advice, rethinking your career search, to the crappiest thing that happened in my job, or having a terrible boss and how to deal with it. The other cool thing, and Jessica just did this yesterday, is we have a Snapchat account that we release, and Kelly's in charge of this. We release to a young professional a couple times a week. Everybody from somebody that works at Twitter to the production assistant at Dr. Oz show to somebody that is literally working in a nonprofit in South Carolina. They share a day in the life of. So if anybody would love to sign up for that, we are more than welcome to add you to our list of 70 other professionals that have done it. And the last thing that we're really proud of, and this is what's spawning this, is we're hosting our first conference called NicheCon. The 3 themes are finding your niche. What does that mean? How do you do it? People like Jess are going to talk about how to navigate and go about that. The other big thing is entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship. So maybe you don't want to be an entrepreneur, but you want to find an entrepreneurial organization. What does that look like? Who's doing it? And the third piece is the storytelling piece. How do you build a personal brand? How do you build your own organization's brand? And we're bringing that together for a 2-day conference, March 10th and 11th. Tickets are already on sale, but the big thing is we have a lot of partners and speakers from HBO to Politico to General Assembly, 1776, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, people like Jessica. Hopefully I can snag you and do a little talk or panel. But about 150 people at George Washington University, March 10th and 11th. Going to be a really unique conference. But again, we welcome people not only to attend, but to be involved in any capacity. Those are just a handful of ways that we like to bring this community together. That's really global, I think. We've had people in Montreal to Iceland, et cetera. But those are just some ways I think people get involved from the inspirational side and help others, as well as maybe some of you are looking to make that career transition or jumpstart your career. But again, I had no idea what to expect with this. Kelly, Heidi, thank you. My wife, Courtney, thank you for running camera. And Jessica, thank you for being here. But thank you guys so much for coming out, regardless of what brought you here. But thank you so much, and we'd love to chat tonight. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Good job. This is awesome. Yeah.
Thank you. And Heidi and Kelly might go around asking for some selfies or some pictures of people before you take off. I'd appreciate that. Yeah. Yes.
I don't do that, so, but do you have